Welcome to Lesson 8, Sustaining Biodiversity Ecosystem Management. This is day 1 of 5. In today's bell ringer, you are going to watch the Edpuzzle and then answer the question, how can forests be better managed? You can press pause on this video and go to your digital notes and click on the link for the Edpuzzle. Or if you have paper notes, you can ask your teacher to share the link for the video. The key terms are old growth forest, tree plantation, depth for nature swap, second growth forest, deforestation, and conservation concession. The objectives for this lesson are to identify examples of ecosystem and economic services forests provide, describe ways scientists classify forests based on their age and structure, identify various methods of harvesting timber and their impacts on forests, and explain how deforestation impacts forests, and describe management solutions that help reduce impacts of timber harvesting, fires, and deforestation. All right, so let's start off by discussing the importance of forests. So forests cover about 1/3 of Earth's land mass, and they provide habitats for about 2/3 of all Earth's terrestrial species. So remember, terrestrial just means land. So out of all of the organisms that live on Earth, 2/3 of all of them live in some sort of forest. And forests provide a lot of vital ecosystem services. So let's talk about a couple of those services they provide. They reduce carbon dioxide in the atmosphere through the process of photosynthesis. So think about what forests are made up of. Forests are completely full of trees and plants. And so every tree and plant takes in carbon dioxide from the atmosphere when it does photosynthesis. So this is a great ecosystem service. It helps to cycle carbon, and it also helps to suck carbon dioxide out of our atmosphere. Second, it supports the energy flow of nutrients. Third, oxygen production. So those same plants that are taking out carbon dioxide are also producing oxygen. Forests help to reduce soil erosion. That's because trees and other plants act like anchors. So their roots are kind of like anchors in the soil, and they help to keep the soil in place even if water is rushing by. Forests help to purify water and air. They help to regulate local climates, and like we've already said, they provide habitats. Some of the economic services that forests provide are fuel wood, especially in impoverished parts of the world. They provide lumber, pulp for paper products, recreation, people who go hiking and running on trails, mining, and grazing for livestock. So because they have such immense value, forests need to be managed properly. So let's discuss forest structure. So before we can really understand how to manage forests, we have to understand the structure of a forest. So it's important to understand forest structure so that we can determine how it should best be managed. So we're going to talk about 2 different forest structures here. The first one is old growth forests. So old growth forests are forests that have not been disturbed for 200 years or more. They have really big trees. They're very well developed. Second growth forests are forests that are full of trees that have resulted from some sort of secondary ecological succession. So what that means is that maybe the trees have been cut down and this is new growth that's coming after that. Maybe there's been a forest fire and there's been new growth after that. So it wasn't everything completely taken away and stuff coming from nothing, but there was still soil there, and then plants started to grow. Tree plantations. So tree plantations are like tree farms. So they're managed forests that contain 1 or 2 species of trees that are all about the same age. You can see an example of a tree plantation here in this image. And you can see that the trees are kind of planted like crops. They're planted in rows. So tree plantations produce wood rapidly and can supply much of the wood needed for industrial purposes. And when we use tree farms, we can limit the need for disturbing those old growth forests and second growth forests if they're not having to be cleared to create tree farms. But there are a couple of things we need to be careful with when looking at tree plantations. So when we only have one species of trees, it makes the plantation less sustainable than a natural forest since the nutrients in the soil are being depleted after repeated cutting. There's also a lack of nutrients, and it can make it less likely for any new forest to be able to grow. An organization such as the United Nations Environmental Program assists with the planting of billions of trees throughout the world. And these plantings have made it possible for many countries to maintain stable tree coverage from 2000 through 2010. And the United States is just one example. All right, let's look at forest fires because this is an important part of forest management. So there are two types of fires that affect forest. The first one is surface fires. So surface fires burn undergrowth, seeds, and leaf litter, and they usually allow wildlife to escape. So the benefits of a surface fire is that it burns away dry brush and sticks and prevents larger, more damaging fires. It releases nutrients from slowly decaying matter. It releases seeds from cones of species like the lodgepole pine and the giant sequoia tree. And it helps to control insects that could be disruptive to the trees. Another type of fire is a crown fire. Crown fires are the large fires that are capable of moving from treetop to treetop and burning entire trees. This makes sense for the name. It's a crown, it happens on top. Crown fires usually occur in forests that have not experienced a fire in decades and have built up a large amount of flammable ground litter. And crown fires are much more destructive than surface fires. They destroy most vegetation, wildlife, houses, or anything else that gets in their path. So when we read about these big forest fires, they're usually talking about crown fires. So this image shows a global view from NASA in October 2020. So notice the places where there are currently burning forest fires. So you can see here, look at all of those in the Pacific part of the United States. So what happens when we don't manage forest well? So let's look at the different aspects of poor management of forest. So first of all, timber harvest. To harvest timber, roads are cut into the forest. And roads can cause an increase in disease, in habitat fragmentation because we're building a road right in the middle of a habitat, topsoil erosion and sediment runoff, and the possibility of non-native species being introduced. Another issue is deforestation. So there are several different types of or different ways that we cut trees down. First one is clear cutting, and that's what we see right here at the very top. So this is when we just go in and remove all of the trees, and you remove everything, not just the really valuable timber. You're not really selective about what you're taking out. This is the most effective and efficient way, but it's the most harmful way to the forest. The second way is selective cutting. When we use this method, the logger will cut only the older, more valuable trees in small groups or even individually. And this method helps to reduce erosion and the overall impact on the ecosystem. So you can see this is an example where the logger has gone in and selected the trees to look like this and has only pulled out these trees and left all the other ones, so the forest isn't completely bare. And the third is called strip cutting. This is removing the trees using the clear cutting method, but leaving strips to help reduce erosion and overall environmental impact. So maybe clear cutting an area and leaving an area, and then clear cutting an area and leaving an area. This method produces a cost-effective yield without as much widespread destruction as clear cutting. All right, so how can we help? So what are some sustainable forestry practices? We can include ecosystem services of forest in estimates of their economic value, not just the timber that we could get from the forest. Identify and protect highly diverse forest areas. Stop logging in old growth forests. Stop clear cutting on steep slopes. This is especially important when we start talking about erosion. Reduce road building in forests and rely more on selective cutting and strip cutting. Leave most standing dead trees and larger fallen trees for wildlife habitats and nutrient cycle. Grow tree plantations only on deforested and degraded land. And certify timber grown using sustainable methods. Some sustainable forestry practices in tropical forests are to protect the most diverse and endangered areas, to educate settlers about sustainable agriculture and forestry, to subsidize only sustainable forest use, certify sustainably grown timber, and reduce poverty and slow population growth. And ways that we can restore forests that have been damaged: we can encourage regrowth through secondary succession. We can rehabilitate degraded areas, and we can concentrate farming and ranching in already cleared areas. So this ends our presentation of day 1 material.